Thanks for your patience. Many of you may know me because I organize these Pangeo showcases now. But for anyone who doesn't, my name is Max Jones. I am a cloud engineer at Development Seed. I'm on the Pangeo Steering Council, the editorial board for Cloud Native Geospatial, and a Zarr Python core developer. And I'm here today to provide a recap for the Pangeo community on outcomes from the Zarr Summit, which was titled Unlocking Scalable and Accessible Open Science on the Cloud. And this was organized in collaboration with Joe Hammond, Davis Bennett, Michelle Roby, and Louisa Diggs. And it was really possible because of the Open Science Meeting Fund from the Navigation Fund. So thank you to them for allowing us to do this work. The Czar Summit, this was the first of a kind event. It was October 13th through 17th, 2025 in Rome, Italy. We had a full week of activities. The first 3 days, Monday through Wednesday, were developer days. We had roughly 25 developers who build implementations of the Zarr data format in libraries, including Python, Rust, C, Julia, R, maybe even others, come together to solve some really key technical blockers that cross the entire community. And we made fantastic progress unlocking some of that progress. And then for the final 2 days, we welcomed adopters to join us for learning and connecting between developers and adopters so that people can learn best practices and so that the people building Czar implementations and libraries and applications on top of that can learn more about the pain points and difficulties and goals of the people using both the format and its implementations. And in this presentation, I'm going to go over some higher level takeaways, some specific technical and social outcomes, just give some perspectives on the future, and lastly, a few thoughts on why I think the summit worked really well. This is kind of the Cliff Notes version. I'll upload these to Zenodo afterwards, and you can have this slide as the summary for all the outcomes if you want to back to it later. The most important outcome was that, which is a huge relief for me, was that people had a lot of fun and really found it a valuable experience. It was truly incredible how many people we got from such a wide swath over the entire world, and that we brought together people across software languages and disciplines to come together, celebrate the togetherness. One highlight of this was connecting with the Stacks community, which was having a sprint during the same week in Rome, learn together through both our developer and adopter days, and dive deep into some key features. And this, for example, happened through breakout groups and birds of a feather at our adopter days at the end of the week. So it was really a fantastic experience. I hope we can keep up the momentum, and I'm so grateful that we were able to do the summit this year. Um, as for takeaways, the first one is that Czar is really taking off. We knew this going into the summit. It was a big driver for proposing the activity, in particular, Sentinel's reprocessing or ESA's reprocessing of Sentinel into Czar was a driver for having this and having it in Europe. We also see increasing adoptions at other small and large public and private institutions uh, across climate modeling, Earth observation, cross-discipline applications, microscopy, and more. A couple pleasant surprises for me regarding Czar that I found out at the summit was first how many times ND Pyramid was mentioned. This is a library I used to help maintain when I was at Carbon Plan, and I was blown away by how many times it came up. So big kudos to Carbon Plan for continuing to maintain that library. It builds multi-scale representation of Czar data in Czar. Uh, yeah. Uh, and I was also pleasantly surprised by the large percentage of people who have already migrated to Zarr v3. Zarr v3 brings increasing extensibility and is designed to enable better cross-language compatibility. And it was really encouraging to see people moving their production pipelines over to Zarr format 3. And then the last component of this massive adoption was its reflection both in the number and the diversity of organizations represented. We have had over 50 different organizations spanning 5 continents. But also, sadly, the fact that many people expressed interest and couldn't make it. We unfortunately filled up the amount of space we had in our venue before the registration deadline. We weren't able to have every person who was interested attend. So next time, and I really hope there's a next time, you need a bigger venue and a way to make sure that everyone who wants to join can do so. Uh, my second takeaway was that we really needed an in-person gathering, and it paid off. As I mentioned, I was thrilled that people loved the event because it brought together a lot of people for the first time. On the right, we have a picture of the steering council. You may be able to see that I poorly photoshopped 2 pictures together because I couldn't get them all in the same picture. But they were, in fact, all there, which was an incredible and first of a kind occurrence. Uh, and in general, there were so many people who met for the first time in person, which enabled making real progress real fast. A couple of my favorite kind of quotes and takeaways. On Wednesday night, one person said that we made 3 years of progress in just 3 days. And that progress really even accelerated over the last 2 adopter days. And most people responded to our post-event survey, and we got 4.8 out of 5 stars, which I think is pretty good. So yeah, I think there's a big appetite for these events. Every single person who responded to the survey expressed an interest in attending another one. So this type of event makes a big difference, and we should continue to do it. And then the last takeaway is that there's still a lot of work to be done. We built a ton of stuff, and we need to make those prototypes production ready. We need to get the community frameworks that we put together out and finalized and support people using them. As I mentioned, there's a big appetite for more events of this kind. We need to continue to offer continuous connection points between Zarr developers and adopters. And we need to keep an eye on the needs of the future. In his keynote on what do we need from Czar 4, Ryan postulated that Czar could make an even bigger difference if it was provided as a database. And I think that's the type of forward-looking thought that we need to really thoroughly consider as an entire community. And if it does seem valuable, work together towards building towards that future. I'll go through a laundry list of outcomes. I likely did not capture them all because there was a ton of activity happening. If anyone was in attendance or knows anyone who has others to add to this list, I definitely would welcome suggestions to revise these slides afterwards. The first outcome, which was kind of the one that was most frequently highlighted in our post-event survey as the biggest deal, was the bootstrapping of a community conventions framework. This will provide the motto we established at the beginning of this ideation was to allow 1 million conventions to flourish. We came up with collaboration structures as well as technical support like JSON schema validation frameworks and templates to allow these conventions to flourish with minimal kind of barriers to adoption. We've since received some very helpful feedback. Tomorrow we have a discussion to talk through that, and the goal is to publish a blog, or the steering council will publish a blog post within the next couple of weeks with more details, and then we'll have follow-up discussion and support after that is finalized. The second key outcome is sharding improvements. So developers from a ton of different languages came together to make improvements, resolve longstanding questions about performance, and work towards reaching feature parity. For those who aren't familiar, sharding is kind of the flagstone, if that's the right phrase, feature of Zarr 3, where you can store multiple compressible units in a single storage unit. This solves the kind of a key drawback of Zarr 2, where you can explode the number of files in your file system. So it allows you to have super fast data access without excessive numbers of files. And implementing this well is super important to Zarr's success. And I think we made some really key progress there during the week. Another outcome I am particularly excited about is the prototype of variable or rectilinear chunk grids. In Part of this outcome is an extension definition that was contributed to the Zarr extensions repository, and we also have working prototypes in both Python and Rust. This diagram shows how that works. So in this case, you might want to concatenate two arrays with partial trailing chunks. As an example, most cogs have, or geotiffs in general, have partial or trailing chunks. Actually, cogs do, geotiffs don't, that are not cogs. And you can't concatenate those unless you have the support for this very variable chunk grid. So this feature will really dramatically expand the number of um, archival file or archival data sets that can be virtualized in Zarr. That's why I care deeply about it. It also will allow you to chunk your, like, say, temporal array by month, where you can have different numbers of like different lengths for, like, say, each month of the year. So it's going to be a pretty key feature, and I'm excited that we came out of it with working prototypes. Another cool prototype that came out of the summit from Eustace was a proof of concept for sparse array support in Python. This is if a lot of your array doesn't actually contain data. It's a more optimal way to store and work with it. And I encourage you, I've linked the PRs in these summaries, so I encourage you to check that out. We have a lot of codec-based optimizations coming out of this summit. One example that I linked here is the suffix key coding. You may have read recently, Element 84 put out a series of blog posts on the relationship between cog and Zarr, where they envisioned this utopian future where you can work together between cog and Zarr. And Mark and the other developers created this codec, which would allow this to actually happen so that you can have data that serves or can be used both using a TIFF-like interface or COG-like interface and a Zarr-like interface. So it's going to be pretty cool. Another exciting one was optional codecs, which only actually compress your data if it decreases rather than expands the data size. So that is useful for optimizing your storage. The list, there's 11, just to give you a preview of how far we're going here. Um, we developed a design document for how to store arrow in Zarr, which will enable efficient storage of ragged arrays, nested structures, and variable length data types. Uh, the Toms, two of the Toms, there's many Toms in the world, Tom White and Tom Nicholas, uh, brainstormed all the use cases for linked arrays where you want to have some sort of like symlinking between different arrays so that your application can really easily work with concepts like multiscales, masked arrays, arrays where you have two different chunking schemes, virtual arrays, and many others. So they outlined all the means and different implementation strategies. This is a really new idea, but I think it has the potential to profoundly expand Zarr's impact and change how we use Zarr in downstream libraries. So I think this would be really cool if it comes to fruition. Another outcome was a vision for storing virtualized data sets as Zarr arrays. So this would allow you to serialize Zarr stores natively to Zarr for those who want to use virtual Zarr technology without relying on specifications from IceChunk and Kerchunk. Usually when I draw this figure, I have an intermediate column that's like go from netcdf to IceChunk or netcdf to Kerchunk, then to Zarr as your API, and then to your downstream use case. In this case, you can go straight from netcdf to stored in Zarr to read by Zarr. So it's providing this unified, harmonized abstraction layer without relying on additional specification. We made great progress towards improved feature parity by building out some more of our compatibility testing, which is like the work here is not done, but this is a key step for getting parity across Julia, Rust, R, Python, etc. And then we move on to some of the more learning and inspiration-based outcomes. We had participants who were interested in a wide range of topics, and we've tried to accommodate all of those through a mix of keynote speakers, technical presentations, lightning talks, and workshops. We also had several breakout groups and birds of a feather. And then I think Rome provided a really great time for people to bond in the unstructured social time. And that is where a lot of the ideas really flourished, was just providing that space for people. In the blog post, I am trying to compile as many slides from these presentations as possible so that you'll have access to that material, even though they weren't recorded. You can skim through the slides and read them for however many of the presenters want to share. And then a key outcome is just that people got together for the first time ever. They met people they may have been working with for more than a decade, and we made some really, I think, long-lasting connections that will serve the community well moving forward. Um, and so for the future, we built a lot of development prototypes and adoption momentum, and we need to keep this going. We have a ton of prototypes and frameworks that we need to finalize so that people can start using them in production. We have a complete rewrite or kind of restructuring of the Zarr Python docs that will hopefully come out this week. And we also think that there's improved documentation and accessibility that is needed across the ecosystem, such as Zarr.dev. We really welcome help making that happen. I mentioned we had fantastic cross-discipline, cross-language, and to some extent geographic diversity. We had extremely poor gender balance. We didn't have anyone from Asia, and I think that we need to have diversity across kind of all axes if we're going to really reach the potential of Zarr as a format and Pangeo, Zarr, etc. as a community. And so we need to dedicate work to fixing those problems. And yeah, as I mentioned, there's a lot of interest in doing another summit. We'd like to do another one in 2026. Please get in touch if your organization is in a position to support this. It would be super cool. We have a ton of like participant feedback that we can support anyone who's interested in getting involved with either this or other events to try to help learn from both what succeeded and what we could do better in the future. And then lastly, just some comments on why this worked. Uh, as I mentioned, it would not have been possible without the Navigation Fund's Open Science Meeting Fund. We also benefited from our sponsors, Be Open and GeoBeyond. I think most importantly was the participants. People were enthusiastic, welcoming, and offered a lot of insightful takes on where things have been, where they are at, and where they're going. And I'm very grateful for every single person who participated in the event, who shared thoughts and wasn't able to make it. It was really fantastic. And I know this is the work of so many people. And then I want to thank my co-organizers, Joe, Davis, Michelle, and Luisa. Michelle sadly skipped out before we could take the picture, and Luisa wasn't able to make it to Rome. And I also want to thank our organizations that let us do this, Development Seed, CNG, and Earthmover. I don't think that we put in the budget, the amount of hours we put into that. So it was really cool that they let us do it anyways and support us in our open source activities. And yeah, again, it was really key that we had such wonderful sponsors for the event. So I think with that, there may have been questions in the chat, and we can stop the recording and take some questions.